Welcome to week 6, and in this week we're going to be looking at the classical age, and we're going to be looking at some of the cultural achievements of the classical age. So we talked about some of the political narrative and the political achievements, rise of the city-states, Persian Wars, Peloponnesian War in the last week. Now we're going to look at some of their moments of cultural success. And so we're going to begin by looking at architecture, and we're going to begin by looking at temples. So Greek temples were initially built from mud bricks using wooden poles, just as we'd seen in the ancient Middle East, and then they graduate first to limestone and then to marble. There are 3 different types of columns that you can see on the PowerPoint slides. The thicker, kind of more basic ones are called Doric columns, which are just kind of like tree trunks coming out of the ground. And then these start to be replaced by Ionic columns around year 550, which are thinner and seen as more sophisticated and feminine. And then finally, we have Corinthian columns that are a little more elaborate. And so you can see examples of all these different types of columns in the pictures of the different temples across the first 2 slides of the PowerPoint. The last and perhaps the most significant work of Greek architecture we're going to talk about is the Parthenon that was built or began to be built in the middle of the 400s. So this was the time when Pericles rose to lead and to influence Athens. The years of the glories of the Delian League. Athens is extremely wealthy prior to the Peloponnesian War, and he begins a massive building program, especially to develop the Acropolis, the high point of Athens, and to rebuild Athens after it was destroyed by the Persians. The most prominent feature of the Acropolis that Pericles oversaw was the Athenian temple, the Parthenon. So this is dedicated to Athena, patron goddess of Athens. I knew I said patron saint. The Parthenon was 220 feet long and 100 feet wide, and it follows this ratio of 9:4. And this was the ratio that the Greeks had established that showed proportionality in measurement. And so what Greek architecture is doing, we see this in the other examples of Greek architecture that I've shown you, but especially in the Parthenon, is emphasizing order and proportionality. And so we started to get into this a little bit with the Archaic Age, the rise of math and science, the way Greeks approach math and science as a way of understanding an underlying order and rationality to the universe. And Greek architecture is trying to emphasize the same thing. And so it's amazing what the Greeks are able to achieve in terms of understanding ratios and perspectives. So the end columns of the temples are slightly wider in order that they look the same. There's no cement. Everything, all the stone has to lock together. Everything is made out of marble. And other buildings continue to be built on the Acropolis despite the expense of the Persian War, which is going to begin in 432. And so if you move on to the next slide, we can see a couple more of these buildings. The Profilia Gateway, which is the passageway that sacrificial animals would be led through and they'd be decorated. Being sacrificed in this way dignified the animal, made it special in a particular way. On the north side, we have state banquets, or a place for state banquets. We have images of Athens' greatest victories, Marathon, Salamis, etc. We have the Temple of Victory, and then we have the Erechtheum on the other side of the Acropolis, which is named after one of the legendary half-divine kings of Athens, one of the founding kings of Athens. So shrines to 10 different gods. We have the sacred olive tree of Athena. We have the tomb of the founder of Athens. So just as in the same way you go to Washington, D.C. today, all this homage to the American founders, we have the same on the Greek Parthenon, or the Athenian Acropolis. And so all of this is to emphasize the order, the wealth that has been achieved by ancient Athens. So that's what we're going to talk about in terms of architecture. We're going to talk about sculpture in the next video.